Happy Wednesday to our Bayou Blitz family. I am Bob Rose. I'm one of your co-hosts to your Bayou Blitz podcast, and I hope everybody is having a great week out there. I know it's a little less cold than it was throughout most of the nation, but a lot wetter. So I hope you're staying dry. I hope you're still staying warm. Joining me is my under the weather co-host Brendan Boylan. Brendan, I won't ask you to talk too much in your introduction, but how are you doing tonight?
I'm okay. I'm very thankful, as you know, and a lot of the viewers know, I was supposed to be on a flight to Denver on Monday morning. Got really under the weather on Sunday, so I guess it's better to be home and sick than be halfway across the country and sick. But I'm doing really well. We have a real special guest with us this evening, and hopefully all you guys during another crazy week of Saints offseason are doing well.
Yeah, I certainly echo that, and we are more than thrilled to be joined by. Listen, I don't know how to introduce them, so I'm going to throw out a couple accolades. As you know, folks, I don't like to call myself old, so you have to be a seasoned Saints fan to remember how good this guy really was, how popular he was through Who Dat Nation. University of Mississippi legend, New Orleans, Louisiana sports legend, and former Saints quarterback John Fourcade joins us tonight. John, how are you tonight, my friend?
Well, I think I'm doing a little bit better than what Brandon's doing. I don't have anything that's catching me, but I've had what he had. COVID's not fun to have, and let's just hope he gets through this, and I'm sure he will. Thoughts and prayers. But, Bob, thanks for having me on, and Brandon for having me on tonight. I'm looking forward to chatting with you guys, Saints and whatever else you want to chat about. And, it's winding down. The season's almost over for the NFL. Super Bowl's down around the corner, and the NFL championship games are coming up this weekend. And other than that, it's just get through this weather. Hopefully this rain gets through us, and we'll all come along and do well with this weather.
Yeah, for sure. And John, I know we're going to be all over the place. I love to pick your brain about your playing career, and also the current state of the Saints. But first things first, you mentioned it, conference championship games coming up this weekend. Who do you like in AFC and NFC, and why?
I'll start with the AFC. I was pulling for Buffalo until they choked on me. It's going to be a toss-up. The only thing I see the Ravens have going for them is Lamar Jackson. I mean, they got a good defense, but, so does the Kansas City Chiefs. And I look at this game in this way. You can contain Lamar Jackson. You got a really good chance to beat him because he's not a great thrower. They do have a good football club, but without him running the football, it's kind of – you got to lean toward Kansas City. I think Kansas City's proven, Mahomes hasn't been on the road to play playoff games. Well, he took care of that business last week against Buffalo. I'm going to go with Kansas City in this game because I just think Andy Reid and his team, he's been there before. He knows what it takes. And I think they can go into Baltimore and beat a very good Baltimore Ravens ball club. And they'll have to do it by their defense. There's no doubt about it. We know that. The defense is going to have to carry them because Kansas City's offense has sputtered. But with that being said, Taylor Swift's not Taylor Swift. What's his name? Kelsey.
He's Mr. Taylor Swift, right?
Yeah, Kelsey's played well the last few ball games, and then they started to catch the football, and they're running the ball, so maybe the offense could do some things. But I like Kansas City in this game. Now, let's talk about the NFC, which I know more about because of the Saints in the NFC. I like the 49ers in this game. I think Detroit's a great story. Don't go by what you saw last week in the Green Bay game because the 49ers were 2 weeks away, not really participating in anything other than getting healthy and getting ready for the game against the Green Bay Packers. I thought they came back strong at the last series. They won the game because of Purdy and McCaffrey. I think the team Francisco 49ers, they won't slip up like they did last week against the Packers. I think this week they know what's at stake. And you can't play against a good Detroit team with a good quarterback. Dan Campbell did a fantastic job in Detroit. Detroit's got their time. It's going to come, but I just think it's the 49ers that rematch to get back into a Super Bowl, and I truly believe the 49ers take care of business. And actually, I think the 49ers will cover the spread in this game. It's a 7-point spread. I think the 49ers can win anywhere from 10 to 14 points. I'm going to go with the 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
I want to keep it right there with the NFC, John, and this is why is Brock Purdy's been a pretty incredible story, right? Mr. Irrelevant in the draft a few years ago. Having played the position yourself at a very successful level, how much of Purdy's success is truly the fact that he has a super talented group around him, the fact that he has Christian McCaffrey? How much of it is him? How much of it is the team around him? And how difficult of a position is it to be in a spot that he was in just a few years ago, get his name and number called, and go on this this type of run with the 49ers?
Well, first and foremost, when you hear people talk about Purdy, oh, he's like Mr. Irrelevant that's over with. That's done. That was last year. Look what he did last year. He got him one game from the Super Bowl. He got hurt. We don't know what could have happened in that football game. He's played well. 3 weeks ago, they're talking about him being the MVP of the NFL. How about that? MVP of the NFL, Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant. He's played consistent for the 49ers. Yes, he's had a couple of bad games. If you go back and look at the couple of bad games, there were some drop passes that were for picks. There were a couple of bad plays here and there. But what quarterback hasn't had that in their career? What quarterbacks this season hasn't played bad in a quarter or so? And nobody's going to go undefeated in the NFL. It's very hard to do that. Very few teams have. And what he's brought to the table is the fact that he does have weapons around him. Now, all that being said, Samuel might not play for what I'm hearing. Emmanuel, I'm sorry. He might not be playing in this football game for what I'm hearing, but they still have the best offensive line. I think they got the best defense in the league right now. They got a great running back in McCaffrey. Their receiving core will step up. They got a good tight end in Kittles. Look, they're not asking for him to do a lot. That's what Shanahan doesn't want. He don't need a quarterback to go out there and be the Patrick Mahomes or the Tom Brady, put it on his shoulders. But guess what he did last week? He took him down the field at the end of the game and won the game for against the Green Bay Packers. So, look, the guy's still young. He's still growing. He's still developing. And just see what he's looked like in 3 or 4 years from now. See what they do in San Francisco. He's the quarterback of San Francisco for many more years to come. I like the young man. I mean, he don't have much stuff to worry about because he's got so many weapons around him. So, we got to get off the old bandwagon of him saying, oh, he's only Mr. Irrelevant and he's only been a couple of years. Look what he's done in 2 years as a starter for the 49ers. Yeah. A lot of quarterbacks would love to have those stats.
Yeah, for sure they would. And as you pointed out, it doesn't matter how you got there, but once you're there, if you do your job and do your job successfully, you're bound to stick around for a long time. Now, John, in your case, you took a little bit different route to the NFL yourself. You have a decorated quarterback at University of Mississippi, broke most of the records by some guy named Archie Manning, with some Saints fans might recognize. But you didn't go right to the NFL. You played in the CFL, played in the USFL, and then ultimately you got your shot in the NFL with your hometown Saints in the 1987 strike-shortened season. Right. Tell our fans how that came about, how you ended up in New Orleans, and how you got your shot.
Wow, that's a great story. If you got a few minutes here, I went back to school in '86. In '85, I went to the Giants, and after 9 weeks up there, kind of hodging around on the IR and things, Bill Parcells released me, and I came back home. My athletic director at Ole Miss called me and said, "Hey, John, you got 1 semester left. I'm paying for it. Please come back, get your degree." And I said, you know what? It's the springtime. Why not? I went back, and then I wrote a letter up at Oxford to Jim Finks and said, listen, what's the chances of me getting an opportunity to try out for the New Orleans Saints? And if you like what you see and I make the ball club or you bring me on, you don't even have to pay me. I'll play for free. And so, a week or two goes by, I got a response from him and saying we would like to bring you in for a tryout. I worked out for them. They liked what they saw. They ended up signing me to a contract. This was in the '86 season. I went to camp with him, and he responded by saying, now, look, if you make this ball club, you're playing for free this year because you told me you would play for free. And I went, I sure did. But he goes, legally, I can't do that to you. Well, I thought I had a shot to make the 1986 team with the New Orleans Saints in training camp. I thought I had a really good training camp. unfortunately, I was released. I mean, there was Richard Todd, Dave Wilson, Bobby Hebert, and myself. 4 quarterbacks, you keep 3. I'm the odd man out. So I was done. That was the end of that. I went to arena football right after that, and we won the championship in Denver of arena football.
Mhm.
And then in 87, when the 87 season began, I had no offers, nothing going on. So I went to coach at John Ehret High School, and my quarterback was a guy named Cardell Stewart at John Ehret. And after about 2 games, the strike season hit. I got a call from Jim Franks, and my agent called me and said, "Hey, they're looking for quarterback situation. And what do you want to do?" I said, "Well, I've got about 3 other phone calls as well. The Raiders and I think Green Bay, the Raiders, and there was one other club that called and talked to him. And I was really frustrated. I was really mad about what happened in '86, and I was not going to the New Orleans Saints because I had a coach that was in the Canadian Football League that was with the Raiders, and he was in the higher upper echelon of the administration. So I'm going to the airport. I'm going to L.A. I'm going to Oakland, to Oakland at the time. And there was Finks meeting me at the airport and basically said that, hey, we really want you here. And I told him this point blank. I said, I was not happy the fact that I really thought I was a better quarterback than some of the guys you had in camp in '86. I felt like I didn't get an opportunity. And he said, you'll have an opportunity. We need somebody. And so lo and behold, I went to the strike. He convinced me. Let's just put it there. He talked me into it. I said, okay, Mr. Finks, I'm going to take your word for it. He was always fair and honest to me. And that led to one thing. So I went to the Saints facilities and signed a deal, ended up with the New Orleans Saints, and the rest is history. I got a good chance to be on the strike season with the team. We had a really good team.
Mhm.
Just remember that now. Without us winning 2 to 3 games, we should have won 3 of them because the game against St. Louis, we had that game won. They scored 3 times on block punt and 2 block kicks and scoop and score. So they didn't really do anything against us. We dominated the game and lose on special teams, but we ended up 2-1, and we beat Mike Dicker coaching in Chicago against a guy named Sean Payton, which he didn't really play but a couple of snaps in that game. And we ended up 2-1, and then the strike season ended. But the good thing was that we were 2-1. Just think if we'd have lost all 3.
Mhm.
I don't know what kind of team we would have had if I would have been there or what. But they ended up keeping 8 of us on the team, and that's how I ended up staying with the New Orleans Saints after the strike season. By I think the way we performed, and they kept the best 8 players that they felt were capable of helping the Saints in '87.
Super talented teams
Yeah.
in the late 80s in New Orleans. But before we get to that, I do want to backtrack. And I do this to ask this question to every guest we have that has spent time in Canada, because I think the CFL, even at this point in time, is a really underrated league. There's a lot of talent up in Canada. Through your experience playing in the CFL and following it up to this point, what are some of the positive things you can say about your experience in the CFL, how it prepared you for the NFL? And if you had to try to convince football fans to turn on the CFL this upcoming season, what would be some of those words of encouragement?
Well, first, when I went up there, I didn't know what to expect, but it was I had an opportunity to sign in the NFL, and it was a financial decision then because the Canadian League in Vancouver offered me some pretty good money upfront signing bonus. I wasn't getting that with the NFL as a free agent. The Atlanta Falcons was one of the teams that wanted me to come to Atlanta, but they couldn't match what the Canadian team offered me. And so I went to Vancouver. And I'll say this, but by going up to an opportunity to play, it still was professional football. You got a paycheck. I knew all about the Canadian Football League prior to me going up there. And I felt like it's a good opportunity for me to go there and learn from the standpoint of it's professional. And my goal was to eventually end up back in the NFL. And so by going up there, I was able to live on my own, understand what it is to be a professional player playing professional football. It didn't matter if it was Canadian or the NFL. Granted, everybody knew the NFL, but people didn't know the Canadian League. And look, Warren Moon played up there. I played against Warren Moon, Vince Ferragamo. I can go on naming some of these quarterbacks that were up there and some players that were up there making good money. not all of them are making what that is now compared to back then. They were making a lot more money back then. Some guys are making good money now, but I had the opportunity to understand what pro football is about. And I spent a couple of years up there learning it and got to play. It's a little different because it's one less down, but it's a lot more throwing. They do run the football up there, but you have a lot more throwing. The field's wider and it's a little bit longer, and one extra guy on the field. And their rules are different. You can put everybody in motion, but it's still throwing, catching, and tackling. So there's not much different in that than playing in the NFL. The rules are a little differently, but you still got to hit somebody. You still got to throw a pass. You still got to catch the pass. So it was enjoyable, beautiful cities. I got to spend a lot of time. As a matter of fact, I'm leaving this Sunday to go back and visit. I'm going to Quebec and Montreal, my girlfriend's birthday, and we're going to spend a week up there and get to go back and visit some of the eastern part of it. I've spent a lot of time in the western, Vancouver and Calgary and places of that nature when I go up that way. But I would recommend this to any. My young nephew went to Calgary. We thought he was going to be on the team last year. He got released the last day. He's still not over it and done with it. So we'll see. I would tell any player, right, if your aspirations to play professional football, I know they got this XFL, they got all that's great and hunky-dory, but if you got a chance to go with nobody realizes it, but the most established league in professional football is not the NFL.
No.
The Canadian League has been around than the NFL. So if you got a chance to get up there and play, look, you get seen up there. It's no different. I tell kids, you coming out of high school, you want to go to college, great. You want to go to Notre Dame, LSU, it don't work out. So what? Go to Nichols, go to Jacksonville State, Tulane, go somewhere where they'll see you. In the old days, you had to go to the big schools. Nowadays, just go somewhere, get a scholarship, get a degree, play football. The NFL will find you. Teams will find you. Even the CFL will. So go play Canadian football. Get some some yardages and get some throws and get all this under your belt. They will find you. And there's nothing wrong with spending time in the Canadian League. If you're a guy that's not going to play in the NFL, you can play 10 years in the Canadian League, you'll make some good money in 10 years up there. And then you might want to live there, you might not, but you're going to play professional football. It doesn't matter if it's in the NFL or the CFL. The NFL is a little different, but the CFL, you get that golden opportunity. I tell guys that all the time. Go play it. If you're able to play good enough football, go to the CFL if you can't make the NFL.
Man, that's a great way to put things, and I hope parents too, not just kids, but parents too, of kids that are playing football. I hope you take to heart what John just said, because there's all kinds of ways you can get your opportunities, just like you said, John. Before we get into your thoughts about the coaching situation in New Orleans, a coordinator situation in New Orleans, rather, I want to get your thoughts. You've obviously been a successful quarterback. You've also been a coach. So I want to get your perspective from both viewpoints. How exactly do you feel about the situation that happened at the end of the Atlanta Falcons game with the New Orleans Saints? You obviously know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Fans, I'm referring to the fake kneel down at the end of the game. Jameis allegedly, Jameis and the team allegedly changing Dennis Allen's wishes to get Jamal Williams his touchdown. John, how do you feel that was handled in both scenarios?
Well, I don't know what goes through those guys' minds of why they did it. I kind of understand why they did it, but then you get to look back this and get on my radio show and I talk about it. And this is what this is my opinion only. Everybody's got one. My take was this is that. He disrespected the head coach. I don't care. They talk about he's a great locker room player. The guy's a backup quarterback. He's not even the starting quarterback. Why was he in the game in the first place? Who cares? He shouldn't have even been in the game. If you're going to kneel down, put your starter in there, they can need games over. Now, with all that being said, if you're going to run the football, why'd you do it from the kneel down position? You should have just got up there and run it. If then your coach can sit there and say, well, what's he doing? So he hit it by doing the kneel down because he really tried to be different in the standpoint of, I don't want the coach to know what we're going to do here. But then he comes out after and says, the time we talked about it and everything. First and foremost, your head coach says something. I don't care if you like the head coach, you don't like the head coach, or what's going on. You don't think you're going to be there next year, whatever it may be. That was some disrespect for that. Now, as far as, I need to get James Williams a touchdown because he's been here great. What about all the other guys?
Mhm.
Yeah, other players on the ball club has been there fighting practice every day and doing their job and everything. The guy had opportunities to score touchdowns all year. He didn't happen to do it. He didn't do it. So, all right. Now he's going to say, the offensive lineman's going to do what you tell him in the huddle. You call a play to huddle, they're going to line up and do it. You call a quarterback sneak, they'll line up and do it. You call a rollout run, they're going to line up and do it. You call a running play when it should have been a kneel down. All right. That's what they could have thought about. Well, that's what the coach called. They don't know Jameson. I don't know if Jameson got in the huddle and said, look, the coach called a kneel down. I'm not doing a kneel down. Let's run. Because if you look at the video and look at Hill standing back there, he was a little shocked and dejected, like, what just happened here? I guess it was everybody. Certain people didn't know what the play was because I didn't think Hill had any clue that it was going to be a running play instead of a kneel down because he was a little shocked. But look, it's over and done with. My take was that Winston did it knowing the fact that he probably won't be back with the Saints this year. But for people to come out and say, it's a team thing, I'm not sure it was a team thing. I think it was individuals. They got their beef with the coach, then they got problems in the locker room.
Well, let's move forward. And one more thing, Bob, before we get into the Saints and the offensive coordinator position and they're up to like eight interviewees, something like that. But
I ain't got my phone call yet. I'm waiting for that phone call. I'll be an OC.
But let's talk about some other head coaching news, just because came across all of our phones not too long ago, and that is Michigan's head coach in Jim Harbaugh taking the head coaching job with the Los Angeles Chargers, a 5-year deal. John, you've been around long enough to see these guys go from college to the pros, back to college, back to the pros, or, however the chain and ladder works through that process. In your time being around the game, what is the biggest difference between coaching college and professional athletes? And second, how do you feel like Harbaugh is going to do with what I think is a pretty talented roster out there in LA?
Well, first off, you talk about the difference in it. Being a college coach, you got to go on recruiting trails. Now you got to deal with the NIL. You got to deal with transfer portals. There's a lot of problems. You got to deal with alumni. You got to deal with a lot of fans. You got to deal with more stuff there. Then when you're a pro head coach, those players are making money. Your job is just to get them prepared, ready to play. Yes, they all make money in the NFL. You making money as a head coach in the NFL. When you're in college, before they decided to start paying players left and right and guys jumping all over the place, look what happened to Nick Saban. Jim Harbaugh handled it pretty good where he was at. It's a situation where it's less of a headache. You don't need to be going to parents' houses all the time. NFL, you're not doing that. NFL, the parents aren't coming beating on your door. Parents are not going to make comments at an NFL game about their son not playing because they're all professionals now. In college, it's totally different. So it's a big step. You've been there long enough in the college. He has. Now, Jim Harbaugh has been one that has done college, has done pros. And so he's, I think, one of the only ones that I can think of. Nick's tried it. Urban Meyer's has tried it. Chip Kelly's tried it, and they all failed at it. Whereas I think, Harbaugh's been around, but what helps him that he was a former player. He knows how the game in the NFL, he knows what players are, he knows what coaches are, administration. I think he's going to do very well in LA. You're right. They got a talented roster, got to shore up a few spots. I love the quarterback. I think he'll come there and get back to his roots that he did in San Francisco, do a few things with the offense there. He got to compete against the Rams. I don't know about the attendance-wise in LA. Maybe that's the reason why they won Harbaugh. It's embarrassing. You go watch the Chargers game, and the fan support there is for the other team more than it is for the Chargers. But I think he'll do well there, and I think he's suited, in my eyes, for the NFL, not the college ranks.
Speaking of head coaches, I see a lot of fans commenting that that New Orleans is not a desirable destination, for assistant coaches or now with upcoming free agency, because nobody respects Dennis Allen. I'm quoting the comments, and you see him too because I've seen you respond to him. Personally, I think that's a lot of BS. It's an opportunity to play for a player. It's an opportunity to build a resume if you're an assistant coach. But how's your feeling? Is New Orleans a desirable destination, for an assistant coach or a player this offseason?
Well, let's look at it. The rules state you can't be an OC at one pro team and then go to another pro team and be the OC. Okay, so that eliminates that. So the next guys up are like quarterback coaches, passing game guys, analysts, whatever you want to call them. You're making $150,000, $200,000. Now you're going making, $500, $600 million, better than what they want to pay you as an OC or a DC. Why wouldn't a coach go? The only drawback that I can see is the fact that, okay, you got Dennis Allen who's here. People are saying things about him. They got to look at it and say, wait a second, is he going to get fired after this season if things don't go well? And then I might be looking for another job, or, is it a situation where, they don't have the talent? You got to look at all that. I think the number one reason why some of these coaches that leave other NFL teams and go to other NFL teams, one is most of them go to places where they got new coaches. They'll be there at least 3 or 4 years. They know that. Or they go to a team that's already winning and maybe a coach has left to go take a position at another team and get a bump in salary and position. They might want to go there for more established. The Saints years ago had that opportunity with Sean Payton here, bringing in assistants and an assistant, but they kept Carmichael for all these years. That's one thing these assistant coaches have to look at. Say, wait a second. Will I go to New Orleans for 1 year? If they don't win, chances are if Dennis Allen don't win, he's out of there. New coach comes in, he's probably going to bring his people in. So that's the only drawback that some of these assistant coaches have to look at it. And that's why I think if you got a guy on staff, they're looking at Curry right now, they might have to be stuck with getting Curry. Unless somebody goes out of the box and says, I'll give it a shot there. If he gets fired, I'll get another job somewhere else. My take is you got to take it. Bird in the hand's better than two in the bushes. And if Dennis Allen stays here because you're the coach and you help him win, you're not going anywhere. So, it can be a catch-22, but if I'm a young guy up and come with that OC position, I'll go anywhere. I don't care if you got a coach who's a lame duck or not. You go there and do your job. Maybe somebody will say that. Say, wait a minute. They might not have won there, but that offense did very well and the coach did very well. It's all about knowing other people in the league, because if you got a reputation as an OC or a DC in the league that's pretty good and you're on a bad team, coaches know who you are.
Right. Yeah, and I'm sorry if I'm stepping on you, Brendan, but that's mainly the perspective that I look at too. A lot of these young guys, a lot of these position coaches that they're talking to, they're young guys. They're late 30s, early 40s, and it's a step up for them. It's a resume builder, isn't it? If you're going from a quarterback coach or passing game coordinator to an offensive coordinator, and you're a young guy, even if the staff, including you, gets wiped out after 1 year, you're still going to bounce back on your feet relatively quickly, right?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. There's the older guys won't, because they've been around enough and you've had all these opportunities. But if a younger guy gets the OC position and say it goes south after 1 year and everybody gets fired, it's not your fault because you're not the head coach. I mean, you do what you got to do offensively or defensively. And if you are getting fired, you know what? You're going to bounce back because a lot of teams have wanted you before. Look, there's a lot of teams want some of these OCs, and you only can pick one team. And if you don't go to 3 other teams that interviewed you and you have to go to one, well, when it's all said and done and they are firing you or getting rid of you after 1 year or whatever it may be, it's not pretty much not your fault. They'll look at it saying, well, the coach was a lame duck and you had a bad situation. We want to give you an opportunity. So, yeah, if you're a young guy in the NFL right now, they'll pick you up. It's hard to find young, good players, coaches in the NFL and the up-and-coming ones. And ones that you can, you stick with them.
On the flip side of that, we were just talking about one guy who's been getting a lot of blame from the fans this last season, and Dennis Allen. I want to talk about Derek Carr, who Bob and I have said for a handful of weeks now, closed the season out pretty well, especially if you look at the statistics. Seem to be growing within the offense. As a guy who played that position, how difficult is it to go from one situation to another, in his case, from the Raiders to the Saints, learn completely new terminology, learn this, learn that, and then 1 year in, realize, oh, I'm getting another offensive coordinator and having to potentially relearn again after just spending a whole year getting acclimated to the system? What challenges does that bring, and how much say do you think Derek Carr should have in who the Saints bring in as offensive coordinator?
Well, first when he got here, you know, I had to work some training camps, and we watched him, and he wooed us, and we were in awe at his physique. He looked good, in shape. The guy's got a great arm. But I saw something in camp, and the guys I spoke with, who I do radio with, we looked at it, and I'm saying, I'm seeing something here that I've been in camp before. I've been in training camp. All these dump passes, these are running back passes, these tight end underneath and stuff. I said, is that what the Saints are going to be this year? They talk about bringing these tight ends in, and we got running backs who catch the football. You didn't see a lot of receivers catching balls in camp, even though they were throwing them out that way. And then when the season began, I looked over at the people I deal with. I said, hey, guys, they better get an offensive line. All through training camp, half the guys, OTAs, didn't even practice. What's going on? They got an average to below average offensive line. I'm sorry, but it showed it this year. If you're a quarterback in the NFL, first and foremost, you better have an offensive line. Secondly, you better be able to run the football. And third, you got to have an offensive coordinator who's going to do the things that's capable for you to do. I didn't see any of that in training camp. I didn't see any of that when the season began. Derek Carr, I'm not taking up for Derek Carr. All I'm saying is, he started out, he struggled early. You got to put some blame on the OC. You got to put some blame on the offensive line. As the season went along, I think he got to the point where I'm not comfortable. I don't have time. He's holding on to the ball a little too long. Out routes and out route, a drag, a corner. All quarterbacks could be able to throw those routes. Things wasn't gelling there. I think they tried too much stuff offensively that really screwed him up. And in the last 5 or 6 games of the season, you saw the Carr that we were expecting to see all year long. I don't know if he took it upon himself to saying, you know, I'm going to call something differently, or you know, I'm just run these plays for me because this is what I feel comfortable. Instead of you alternating every guy, I couldn't understand after every play, 3 in, 4 out, 4 in, 3 out, just too many players. Changes going on there. I never thought about that as a quarterback, that would be what I wanted to do, in and out with different players and that. So I think they put too much on Carr, and I think they were trying too much stuff, and it got him in trouble. I think basically sometimes make it, you know, KISS, KISS, keep it super stupid, you know, keep it things stupid, simple, whatever you want, whatever I call it. It's a situation that we got a good quarterback here. There's no doubt, but he needs offensive protection. He needs better play caller, and he needs a running game. And if you get all that, that's great. Now, the flip side of it, too, is now, where was your defense last year? The defense put them in a hole a lot of times in situations where they're always playing catch up. And it's a team right now that they got weapons. Defense is getting old and slow. Offensively, they got to protect Carr. They got to find the OC. Number one thing I do right now from going forward is get an OC so they can get started. As every day goes by, that's less you're going to have an OC, and that's less time you get to get together. Get it done as soon as you can.
And you hit on something very key there, and the comfort of your quarterback, and in this case, Derek Carr. John Gruden is a guy that Derek Carr is very, very comfortable with. John Gruden is a name that we have heard been thrown around, rumor-wise, for joining the New Orleans Saints. My thought process is I don't think that, and this is just my hunch, I don't think that they'd look at bringing John Gruden in as a traditional offensive coordinator. It would be as a senior consultant, associate head, something along those lines. Can you see John Gruden joining this club And if so, what kind of role do you think he would be brought in for?
One, I'm not a big Gruden fan. I know all about his offense and stuff. He didn't do anything great when he was with the Raiders from a standpoint of lighting it up offensively with Carr as his quarterback. Granted, they know each other and everything, but he's old school. You know what I mean? But that is, if you ever been John Gruden, he'll call a play. You can read War and Peace quicker than you can do his offensive play selection. It's unbelievable that the things that he has done offensively. It's nobody needs to get in the huddle and blur out War and Peace by the time you go out there to the line of scrimmage. He's got too much going on there. Simplified, and that's what you're seeing now. These younger guys, just make it simple. Get in there. You can make it your play selection. You do things like that. But he's been around a long time. He's got a little baggage with him too, and they gotta fix that. That little problem that he's got going on. Things that he said in text and tweeted and all that stuff. Out there in email. So I just don't think that he'll be the offensive coordinator. As a consultant, get with the younger guy and coordinator and kind of, like, hey, man, I think some of these things would work, and you can do stuff like that, and you implement it in your way as a coordinator. Nothing wrong with having him on board, but another factor I thought of is if you bring John Gruden on board, and I'm Dennis Allen, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm looking over my shoulder. 3 weeks in a season, 4 weeks, we're 1-4 with whatever. He gets fired. Guess who's the head coach? John Gruden. And not saying that would happen, but from a head coaching standpoint, it's tough to have a John Gruden on your staff as a coach that's overlooking. As a consultant, it's a little differently because he's not around and calling plays, this, that, and the other. But he's got a reputation. People know of him. I would prefer to go another route.
Keeping it there. And it's interesting you say all that because that's the exact conversation Bob and I have had over the last couple weeks of, well, if he gets on, he would be next in line for head coach. I don't think Gruden as the OC, as you said, is going to happen. I see some sort of consultant, senior offensive, essentially throw three business sounding words together and then poof, you have a job title, as the old joke goes. You said a little earlier, for each passing day that the Saints don't have a new offensive coordinator, it almost hurts New Orleans because that's less time you get with a new offensive mind and Derek Carr and Dennis Allen. But it seems like Mickey Loomis is going to take all the time he wants or all the time he needs to make this decision because, in his words, the Saints have to get this one right. I joked earlier, said they're up to 8, 9, 10 different guys that they're potentially interviewing. In your opinion, is it wrong for the Saints to overplay this and overly want to get it right? Or is there a candidate out there where you're going, that's the obvious choice. This is a home run if the Saints can just hit the fastball?
Well, my take is this: is the longer you wait, and I don't know who Curry is much. I think the longer you wait, you got a guy right there in the facilities that you can fall back on and say, we'll give it to him. But if you're looking at 8 other guys out there, then it's obviously you're looking to go somewhere else outside of your organization to hire an offensive coordinator. By taking so long, that means other teams could snatch up somebody you might want. Like, I like the guy from Seattle. All right. He ended up going to Chicago. I like the guy. Let me put it this way. You're going to pick somebody from Sean McVay's team or Kyle Shanahan's team with those kind of guys there. That's what you want to go for. Or even the guy Zach Taylor's team in Cincinnati, which can't get Pritchard. He's already took the job. So you see process elimination. You might have had those 8 guys as you want to interview, and it shouldn't take you this long, and you interview these guys. You should have just had 4 guys. I mean, that's common sense. You can find 4 good offense coordinators up and coming in the league to go after. And I don't know why Loomis is really much. It should be DA because it falls on DA, Dennis Allen's back that you better get the right one. Mickey's not going to be in there every minute in the room finding what's going on. It's got to be DA that makes this decision. Now, Loomis could sit in there and hear and talk about it. That's great, but it shouldn't be prolonged this long. There's, I would go after the guy for the Rams, the quarterback coach. I'd go after the two guys that Greasy and the other kid, Kubiak from the San Francisco 49. That's three right there. They talk about the guy from Houston. Well, he has never really done anything except coach C.J. Stroud, and it's his first year doing it. So I'm not sold on that gig. You got to be in a position for a coaching staff. And if you're going to take a guy who's just a quarterback coach with a defensive-minded head coach, it struggles because he doesn't call the plays. Give me somebody who's involved with the offense, like the guys over at McVay and Kyle Shanahan. That's who I'm going. I'm not going after the guy who coaches defensive and he gets an offensive coordinator and you got some other coaches on the staff. Give me an offensive-minded coach and go after his staff. The guy in Cincinnati. That's who some people went after, two of their guys. One become the head coach of Tennessee. The other guy's now the offensive coordinator in Cincy. Then you got two guys in the 49ers. I would take me somebody from the 49ers, or I would take me somebody from the Rams. They have talented guys on their staff. And look at their tree, as they would call it, of all the coaches that are out there in the NFL that have coached together, played against each other, and have the reputation of putting out some pretty solid assistant coaches. Doesn't take this long to find an OC.
Folks, that is what John Fourcade just said is the exact conversation that he and I had the other night. That's what a lot of people aren't understanding. And they see a kid like Jared Johnson, and I say kid because he's younger than I am, and he did have great success with C.J. Stroud, and that's a feather in his cap. But what was the major complaint that most people had about the New Orleans Saints offense this year? Play calling. Well, if you don't bring in an experienced play caller, like you said, John, Dennis Allen's playing with his own job security at this point. If they don't get this right, there are going to be a lot of people starting with Dennis Allen. That's going to be on the unemployment line here. So your hunch, based off of the Saints personnel, you're bringing in you're bringing in guys to talk to from McVay's coaching tree, from Shanahan's coaching tree. So which of those two offensive systems, 49ers or Rams, would be better suited, in your opinion, for the Saints' offensive personnel as it stands right now?
I like the Rams situation. I've always liked McVay in his strategy. When he had Goff there, took him to a Super Bowl, he did some fantastic thing offensively. He got Matthew Stafford there, same thing. It just kept clicking, didn't care what quarterback was. So when you look at Carr needs to be in that type of a system. I don't know if Carr is suited for nothing wrong with Shanahan, but what Shanahan has is one fantastic defense, one great running back, and a fantastic offensive line. So he can get anybody really much to put at quarterback and not cost you anything to play back. That he had Jimmy Garoppolo, and now he's got Purdy. The Saints don't have that luxury. They have got to move the ball around. The 49ers don't quite do that, but I still like what Kyle Shanahan does with the offense. He's got good play selection from the passing game, good running ability, but he's got the athletes. And I think if you can use McVay offense with the Saints, because you don't have to have those great athletes because you're spreading the ball around, you're doing a few things. They ran the ball well in LA last year, good running back. You got good receivers, got a good quarterback, so they can throw the football. And that's all you got to bring. They don't have the greatest offensive line, but they got the great offensive philosophy. The Saints need that. And let's go back to really quickly. When you talk about, the Saints guys on staff, if you bump Curry up, well, you didn't really bring an offensive coordinator in.
Right.
You bring somebody new. It's time to get some new faces in here. You done fired 3 coaches. Bring in a new offensive coordinator. Let me say what happens when sometimes you bring a new offensive coordinator. They're going to want to bring in somebody that works with them in a passing or passing game, whatever it may be. You see a lot of that happen when coaches come in, a defense coordinator, offense coordinator. They'll bring 1 or 2 guys with them that they want to have on the staff too that can help them put the game plan and do things like that. So that's the issue with the Saints is, if you don't find anybody and you bring Curry on board to call your play, he's never called plays before. What he did in the Senior Bowl, what does that got to do with it? That's the Senior Bowl. That's not calling plays. Okay. Granted, the guy in the Rams organization hasn't called plays, but he's been around it enough, sort of like Curry. But look at the situation. Curry's been here, and they can sit there and say what they want. The offense ain't done anything in the last 2 or 3 years. You know what the Rams offense did? You're the 49ers, and those coaches that they have there are part of it. They might not call the play, but they're in the ear of the offensive coordinator a little bit more. And if Curry has been here 3 years and he hadn't been able to get in Pete Carmichael's ear, then that just goes to show you that they didn't respect him enough to take his word for things.
With the last 10 minutes or so that we have for tonight, I want to go back to some of your playing days.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I want to ask you this because you're one of just a handful of guys that were superstars in Louisiana high school sports that went on to play for the New Orleans Saints. A couple that come to mind, Tyrann Mathieu, who's currently a New Orleans Saint, Delvin Breaux, who was a Saint for a little bit as well. What did it mean to you in 87 to put on the black and gold for the first time, knowing, man, I got to represent Louisiana at the high school level, and now I'm getting a chance to do it at the highest level, representing my hometown team?
Well, let's go back and talk about the hometown team. I'm a West Banker. I'm from Gretna. So, when people say, you're from New Orleans, no, but I got to tell people I'm from Gretna. And but the only team we have here is the New Orleans Saints. So growing up, I was not a Saints fan. Didn't know much because they wasn't winning. Who wants to support a losing team? And I was a big Raiders fan. Darryl LaMonica, Freddie Bullet-McCall. I can go on and on and on and talk about all those guys back in the day. I can probably name all the whole team. But as time grew on and went by, and when I had that opportunity to go to the strike season training camp or to camp with them, that hit me right there. I'm like, hey, guys, I'm pretty much going to be the quarterback for New Orleans Saints. I was pretty much told I would be, and Mr. Finks was right. I was the quarterback, and then I remember that first game in the Dome in '87 against the Los Angeles Rams. Strikes. I didn't know what to expect. Okay, we go in there and we go play. We're in the Dome, and it wasn't 75,000, but 40,000 was still 40,000 in the Dome, wherever it may be. And then it gradually got there. And so, with that being said, being a local guy playing for your local team, like a lot of people can't say that. And I was very fortunate to play with my brother during the strike season. We both was on the Saints team, Keith. And so, that's a cherished day. My family's here. Everybody got to see me. It just felt great. And then when I made the club and being on the ball club, I didn't want to just say I made the club to be on the team. I wanted to keep, I was frustrated I wasn't playing, but I understood what transpired. I got to work my way up again. After the strike season, I was the guy for 3 weeks, and then I'm the third guy now. I got to fight my way to stay on this ball club. Then I became the second guy, and then I was eventually the starting quarterback. Things went well for a while, and then we won't get into what happened last year that I was there. Things changed drastically. They changed my style of play, and that ruined me in some essence. But look, you'll never take that away from me. And here's another thing that they'll never ever take away from me. In that strike season in '87, we played the Rams in the Dome. There was a play that happened in the game that made the 100 greatest all-time touchdowns. And people are like, what do you mean? I said, well, it's on video. It's in Steve Sabo's collection of greatest NFL 100 touchdowns. I happen to be number 100, but I'm still in it. And they'll never take that away from me. And then, people, they laughed about it because it was, it was interception, fumble, pick up by me, and running back for a touchdown. So it was all pretty comical that it happened. And then, Chris Berman made it into a blooper video. So I got two big videos out there now. NFL greatest 100 touchdowns. But, guys, anytime you play a sport and you play for your home team, that's the biggest cherish. Yes, I represent the New Orleans Saints wherever I go. People, they know that. When they hear it, they oh, man, former Saints quarterback, play for the Saints, play in the NFL. I don't go around pounding my chest about it, but if it happens to leak out, somebody knew that it's me, and I'm gonna talk about it. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of the fact I was a New Orleans Saints quarterback got to play in the NFL.
John, to end the '89 season, you started the last few games, almost brought the Saints into the playoffs. That legendary snow game in Buffalo sticks in a lot of older Saints fans' minds. Did you expect to be the starter going into the 1990 season?
Oh yes, there's no doubt about it. When the '89 season ended, I was the starter going into it, and like I said, when we ended '89 season, we were averaging 35 points a game. And they let me play football. I mean, yeah, I ran, scrambled, did things like that, but it brought us 35 points a game. I was doing things that, they wasn't doing before. And so when the 1990 season began, I was pretty much lectured about, hey, you can't play that way. You got to do this, you got to do that. I'm like, okay, it's like, a guy throws a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, and you tell him, I want you to throw curves every time now. Well, I get in there, and they're not moving me around. Some of the play selection was a little strange from what we ended the 3 games in '89. I was a little shocked at some things. They brought Steve Walsh in. After we were struggling, we were winning, and we lost some games, but we were still okay where we were at. And when they brought Steve in, it knocked me down to the backup. I wasn't happy, but what am I going to do? I'm just a guy that works for a company and works for a team, and I don't coach it, so I got to follow along. And I was there in and out and every day and doing what I had to do. And when it was my time again, I was going to take that opportunity to do it. But I felt they got off on me too quick, and I felt that they didn't help me. You can go look at them games, and that's a difference in my play style. When you can't take Lamar Jackson and tell him don't scramble, don't move around, and that's what they basically told me. Hey, we're not calling some of these plays to get you on the outside. Why not? I'm a big enough guy that I'm not afraid to take a hit, and I know get the heck out of bounds, get down. I'm not going to take on these guys like a running back, but I could tell the play selection was totally different, and they basically told me week in and week out, don't do this. We're not going to do this. And they gave you a list of what do you want us to call, and I'd give them the list, and hell, 2 or 3 players on the list would be called. The rest of them be thrown in the trash. And
wow,
I was disappointed in it, but there was 3 yards in a cloud of dust, and hope our defense wins and Morton Anderson kick field goals, and we win 10-7.
Wow.
You could play a lot of what ifs, not just with your career, but with a lot of moments throughout this franchise's history. I want to talk about that defense, that magical defense, the Dome Patrol that you got to play with. We've had a couple guests over the years talk about lining up against them, whether it be in games as the opposing player, in practice. When you got to go against those guys, be in the locker room with some of those guys, what did you learn most about yourself at quarterback? And did you know at that time that you were on the same team as what a lot of people argue the greatest linebacking corps of all time?
Oh, listen, I sat in the locker room close enough to Ricky Jackson's locker, and it's Pat Swillings. Sam Mills was across from me, and Yvonne Johnson, the 4 dominating 4 linebackers on one team that I've ever seen. And what they brought to the table and what I respected was the fact that they were friends. They didn't treat me anything differently because I was a strike player. They respected me, the fact that they came up to me and said, hey, man, thanks for keeping this team together. No telling where we'd be at. It was myself with a bunch of other players. They were so grateful for that. And I got to be friends. I'm still today good friends with all of them. Except for Yvonne and Sam, who passed away now. But I see Pat, I see Ricky all the time. I'm about to play in Ricky's golf charity event in a couple of months. But from a standpoint of knowing those guys and watching the guys play, I was when Ricky Jackson slammed his car underneath a flatbed truck going home one day and missed one game when he's got his wired up mouth and jaw, and he comes out and play. That's respect there. I respected him. I respected all of them. They were leaders. They put fear. when I say fear, not in our eyes, but other teams, players' eyes, because they know they got to look across their 4 guys. I got to look across them at practice. A lot of times at practice, I was going against the backups, because you don't go 1 against 1 that much. You did a little bit, but I got to go against them a little bit. And anytime I got a chance to throw something on one and do something great, but I've had my picks in practice of those guys. But the city champ, Ricky Jackson, class act, great guy. Till today, he reminds me of he's got to be up there, one of the greatest. He doesn't look like your typical linebacker, your LT, but the guy plays. The guy can't play every day. He had a little pot belly out there practicing and playing. Ricky Jackson was a beast. Sam Mills, the mouse, was unbelievable. You never wanted to go after him. He would hit you. Von Johnson was an animal. Pat, the slim, fast guy on the outside. So each one brought something to the table. But in the locker room, they were as like brothers to me. Everybody respected them. But on the field, it's a different situation. They came to practice. They came to play. And it showed. They all well respected.
John, I always ask quarterbacks who their favorite receivers were. I always ask receivers who their favorite quarterbacks were throughout your career. And a lot of guys play the politically correct card, but I want to get your thoughts through not only Saints, throughout your entire career. Who's the best wide receiver you ever threw the ball to or played with?
Eric Martin was. Let me tell you about Eric. Eric couldn't run out of his own shadow. He was not the fastest guy. But man, he has some route running ability, and he can get open. Brett Perriman was good, and Mo Hill, the guys that I had a chance to throw to. I had a guy in the Canadian Football League as well known. His name is Mervin Fernandez. He ended up playing with the Raiders for a while.
Raiders, yeah.
Swerving Mervin, and but there was a couple of guys in the Giants, but I didn't get to play. But I'll put Eric Martin against anybody on a route running. And the guy can catch. Now he ain't gonna blow past anybody, like speed wise, but he will make a move. He's a Jerry Rice, but a little slower. If you know what I mean.
All right. You kind of answered this already. So if there's another moment that comes in your head, I'd love to hear your answer to that. Favorite moments of your professional career? You brought up playing with your brother. You brought up that first game in the Superdome, but is there another moment throughout your career, whether it be in New Orleans or elsewhere, that sticks out as one of your all-time favorites?
Well, other than the Saints, going to Buffalo when it was 0 degrees, snow all over the place, and throwing for 305 yards and knocking the Bills out of the division title. Then coming back a week later, Monday Night Football, knocking the Philadelphia Eagles out of their division title. And then the third and last game, Christmas Eve in '89, beating the crap out of the Indianapolis Colts 41-6, totally knocking them out of the playoffs. That's probably the best I've ever had in my moment of the NFL, other than playing that first game. Now in college, nobody can ever take this away from me, but my last college game was against Mississippi State, the Egg Bowl, the last play of the game. We drove down with 24 seconds all the way down to the 1-yard line and scored the winning touchdown with 2 seconds left. And that's how I ended my college career, with a run around the end. We win the game with 2 seconds left. That's how I ended my college career. So I ended up college career with the winning touchdown to beat Mississippi State. That's my thrill in college. And in pro football, it had to be that '89 season, those 3 games. Each one was fantastic. But going up to play in the snow in Buffalo, having a blast while we were doing it and winning. And so, yeah, just being able to play in the NFL for the New Orleans Saints, that's a thrill there in itself, and been able to still live here and still do some things with the Saints.
And John, I do want to thank you for all of us seasoned older Saints fans for the memories that you've given us, and the fact that you are still so involved, and just such an engaging personality on social media as well. Man, we got to do this again. I apologize it took me so long to bring you on, but thank you so much for for taking some time out of your schedule tonight. And again, thank you for everything that you've done for New Orleans Saints sports, Louisiana sports. You're a legend, my friend, and we thank you for it.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me. And if y'all want to do something prior to the NFL draft, get some information from our radio guys. And when we get everything rolling, if y'all want to, we could talk the draft. A little insider on the Saints and stuff. We'd be more than happy.
Oh, for sure. Consider it a date. We do a draft, live draft special, all 3 days, and we come on weekly here. So yeah, we'd love to get your thoughts prior to the draft. So we will definitely stay in touch. Thank you so much.
Oh, I appreciate it, Bob, and thanks, Brandon. And Brandon, stay healthy. Stay off airplanes until you're clear.
I'll do it. Thanks so much for hanging out with us.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
Take care.
You too.
Oh, that was John Fourcade, former Saints quarterback, University of Mississippi legend, Louisiana sports legend, very, very opinionated, but also honestly very, very engaging. If you follow him on Facebook, that's kind of how he and I struck up a conversation. He commented on one of our Saints News Network articles recently, just a few days ago. We started messaging privately, and then all of a sudden, sometimes it takes a little while for the light bulb to come on for me. But I was like, hey, why don't you join Brendan and I on Wednesday? And he immediately said, I'll be happy to. I can't wait to do this again. I can't believe it took us so long to get him on the show, but what a great interview.
Oh, absolutely. And I've said this many times before, is getting a guy like that on the show to give not just us, but you guys, the viewers and listeners as well, a little bit of insight to what it's like going through, what goes into bringing in a new offensive coordinator, what that's like for players. The little insight of, things that I didn't know, I'm sure you didn't know either. The insight of going into the 90 season as the starter and, being told, you got to fit this mold opposed to the mold of yourself. And he brought up a good point, and with Lamar Jackson, Lamar Jackson's not going to be as successful as Lamar Jackson has been if he was forced to play another style of offense. You can go through so many different quarterbacks since I was supposed to be in Denver this week, let's talk about, a good example in Denver. When Tebow came to Denver and had the little Tebow mania run, you think Tebow would have been successful running the same offense they ran with Peyton Manning just a few years later? Absolutely not. And that's the one thing, and you and I have said this so many times as well, and we talked about DA specifically this year, and we talked about Carmichael specifically this year with things like that, is your job as the coach is not just to draw up X's and O's.
Yeah.
Your job is to utilize your players to the best of their abilities in order for not just them to be successful, but the team to be successful. So if you have a guy who was a little bit more chaotic's not the right word, but I'm sick, so bear with me. That's the best word that comes to mind. When you have a reckless, maybe that's a better word. You have a quarterback that plays a little bit more reckless style of football and you're averaging 35 points a game. Well, who cares? Play reckless, whatever puts points up on the board. You live with it, you die with it, whether it's gunslingers, whether it's scramblers, whatever. Green Bay lived with Brett Favre for however long they did. You're the ultimate example of a gunslinger. You don't go, now, Brett, I know you're like a 4-time MVP, but I really need you to make those safe passes.
Check it down. Check it down.
We need to have those safe little 5-yard routes, Brett. That wouldn't have Brett Favre in the Hall of Fame. It wouldn't have the Saints a Super Bowl title either. Thanks for being on your whole life, Brett.
But that's why I want. A lot of people, and this isn't necessarily a criticism. It's just what some people are. What average fans sometimes look at. They just see names, or they just see specific players, like Gerard Johnson. Again, I think Gerard Johnson from the Texans could be a great coach. A very young career so far, but very successful. And what he did with C.J. Stroud, you can't overlook that. But I love John Fourcade's insight on, hey, the Saints, we all know that the Saints have to get this right. We all know that Dennis Allen needs to get this right to keep his job. But it's more than just getting a name in. You need somebody whose philosophy fits the personnel that the Saints have. The Chris Olaves, the Rashid Shaheeds, and my God, the Alvin Kamaras. And that's, Jordy Haltberg asked me about this on Tuesday. What should be the focus, focus questions, that Dennis Allen or Mickey Loomis are asking these interviewees. I said, if it's me, I ask just one. How are you going to use Alvin Kamara? How are you going to use Alvin Kamara? And that to me is probably the answer on the answer is predicated on whether you're going to be in consideration for the job or not. And just before we sign off the air, just to give you guys, you fans a quick update. The Saints did interview, give an official interview to. I'm laughing as I say this. Pittsburgh Steelers quarterbacks coach Mike Sullivan today. That's right. I suppose they're leaving no stone unturned. So that actually does bring their list up to 8 candidates that they've officially interviewed. Sullivan, Clint Kubiak, and Brian Griese from the 49ers. Gerard Johnson from the Texans, Shane Waldron from the Bears, Zach Robinson, quarterbacks coach for the Rams, Dan Pitcher, quarterback coach for the Bengals, and of course their own in-house guy, Ronald Curry. Pitcher, no longer an option. Accepted a promotion with the Bengals shortly, not too long before we came on the air. Waldron, no longer an option, as John pointed out, accepted a position with the Chicago Bears. So I wouldn't be surprising if the Saints interviewed a couple more candidates. But my hunch is it's got to come down to Clint Kubiak or Zach Robinson, right? I like Brian Griese a lot, don't get me wrong. He's only been a coach, period, for 2 years and not a play caller in either one of them. So I'd love Griese. I love Griese as a quarterback, by the way, for the Denver Broncos. But you got to think that, again, given the personnel that the Saints have, a multifaceted offense like the 49ers, or the way the Rams passing game has been structured for years, Zach Robinson, Clint Kubiak, they've got to be your top 2 choices, right, Brendan?
Yeah, I like Clint Kubiak a lot. Brian Griese is interesting. The fact that he has not been coaching long, and like you said, has not been a play caller is, a thing that's might be like, I don't want to call it a red flag, maybe like a caution flag. Like,
it's a concerning issue. Yeah.
I don't know if he's 100% ready, right? That's kind of the flag that you're waving there. But the things that I like about Brian Griese, right? You mentioned his success as a player. Pro Bowler, led the league in passing yards 1 year, Super Bowl champion as a backup somewhere on his long ride of NFL teams. For me, I'm weird. I like family trees in football.
So do I.
So the fact that his dad is one of the most successful quarterbacks of his era, undefeated Miami Dolphins team. I also think that sets a standard as well, not just for the son, in this case, Brian, on the field, but in his coaching career as well, because he's lived in locker rooms his whole life.
Mm-hmm. As has Clint Kubiak, by the way, too. So there's that.
Exactly. So I like Clint a lot as well. I think, like I said, I think Griese's like a year or 2 away, right? He's going to be a good coordinator at some point in his career. I like Kubiak a lot, but this has nothing to do with the candidates. I have a hunch or a feeling. Anytime that you have to stress in an interview or something that you have to get it right, a lot of times you end up not getting it right. And that's my concern in New Orleans, is there is so much stress to get this right that sometimes I think in any situation, you and me included, when you have to get something right, you overthink it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you overthink it and you start second guessing yourself, what's the one thing like in high school they always told you? Like if you have a multiple choice answer, like never change your answer. Like once you've
Yeah.
circled something, like don't go back and change it because you're usually right the first time. Overthinking is a poison pill. And I have a feeling that's what the Saints are going to do here. I think Kubiak is a good choice. I think for me right now, he would be my favorite to get the job. But I just see this being a situation where the Saints overdo it, or they overthink it to the point where they go, Ron Curry, come on down. You're the next contestant on. And that's just what it is. Like they do all these outside interviews. It ends up taking a lot longer than people think. And they just stay in-house.
Yeah, and listen, I think I like Ronald Curry a lot. I think he's going to be a good coach, a very good coach, somewhere. But I don't think it's going to be with the New Orleans Saints, and I don't think it should be with the New Orleans Saints as an offensive coordinator. John Fourcade made a great point when he said, look, Ron has been with this organization now since 2016, where there's been very little changeover in the offensive staff. The offense became stale, and even after Sean Payton left, Ronald Curry had an opportunity to be a different voice in that room, and he either wasn't respected enough, to be heard, or wasn't forceful enough to force himself to be heard. And it's also logic 101. Why would you, and this is amazing to me, everybody that wanted Pete Carmichael, the people that wanted Pete Carmichael gone, of those people, the ones that now immediately think that Ronald Curry is going to be the good hire, what makes you think that? Really? I mean, what makes you think that? Look, Pete Carmichael, Ronald Curry, they're two different people. They could have two completely different ideals. But also, look at it from Dennis Allen and, frankly, Mickey Loomis and the ownership's perspective. You're doing something to ease the fan base. You probably want to do something to ease the fan base. Keeping a candidate in-house on a staff that had been, frankly, a failure for the last 3 years is probably not the way to do it. So, even if Ronald Curry is the right man for the job, I don't think he's going to be given the job.
Well, that's an excellent point. And we've talked about this before too. What's the definition of insanity? Right? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Now, to your point, Bob, Ronald Curry, Pete Carmichael, completely different people. Might have completely different offensive philosophies. But what would make you think that after the last 3 years of, I don't know if we want to call it failures. I don't know if we want to be that dramatic.
It's a strong word I use, but I mean, nonetheless.
But, like blatant offensive struggles. After 3 years of that, what makes you go, we fired the offensive coordinator, the guy in charge of these struggles. Let's just promote one of his assistants.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't make a whole lot of logical sense.
Yeah, and if you really thought that Curry was going to be that big a difference of a voice, then you'd have made a move with Pete Carmichael after the first 6 or 7 games, in the offensive woes that we have seen, because nothing has changed in the last 10 weeks. Curry's not an experienced play caller. Well, then why are you going to him now?
Exactly. And just to hammer this point home a little bit, and I believe it was Alan who brought it up on our show. Like Carmichael is the longest tenured coordinator in the history of the NFL.
Yeah.
Right? What was 06 to 24, so 18, right? So like a lot of this has to go back on the Saints as well, that it took this long. And you and I were both surprised when only 3 coaches got cut and lost their job.
I'm still shocked. I'm still shocked that Doug Marrone is employed as of as of this evening at 10:19 p.m. Eastern time.
Like, it's unreal that you don't just clean house of everybody and start from scratch. And we talked about this last week too. It's also really hard to hire an offensive coordinator that's not in-house and go, you got to keep these guys.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you might give them the option and say, well, they're here if you want them. You can bring your own guys in, whatever you want to do. But you don't think that's coming up in interviews? Like, if you're interviewing me for that job and I look at what's happened, I go, well, it looks like you guys fired a handful of coaches, but you still have a few more on the roster or on the, on the staff. So what exactly is the expectation here for that?
Right.
Like, that's an awkward question. But it has to be coming up if you've had 8 official interviews already. You would think. Maybe not. Who knows?
Well, and I think ultimately, and I do believe that they will ultimately go outside the building for the offensive coordinator hire. I don't think that whoever they hire is going to be forced to keep Ronald Curry, Jari Evans, who I'd love to see stick around for sentimental reasons, or Doug Marrone, but they'll be given that option. But I mean, we shall see. I still think the hire for this position could be as many as 2 weeks away. If the San Francisco 49ers win, on Sunday, you're still very limited in the moves that you can make with Clint Kubiak or Brian Griese. And if either one of those guys are their men or are their choices, they got to wait. They could talk to him. They could talk to him between the Super Bowl championship game and the Super Bowl. But their exposure is going to be very limited because these guys are going to be talking to other teams as well.
Well, and you can have a handshake agreement,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then it become official the day after the Super Bowl. But that's a great point, Bob. This is not something that, as much as Saints fans would like for this to be problem solved relatively soon, it's not going to be. So with that, it's a good transition into, Bob, it's the off season, but you're still writing a ton. You still got stuff coming out. You still got stuff going on outside of here on the Bayou Blitz. So where can everybody follow you and your work with the Saints News Network?
Yeah, and thank you for pointing that out. And we haven't gotten into draft coverage yet through the Saints News Network, but these black circles under my eyes, they aren't just natural insomnia like they are most of the year. It's because I'm watching more draft film than what I usually do during the course of the year. So we're going to have those pieces coming out too. Mock drafts, season in reviews, year in review pieces rather, both by position, which John Hendricks has already started, and by individual players, which I'll probably be taking up. Speaking of John Hendricks, condolences to John and his family. John just lost a very treasured loved one. So to John, his lovely wife, his kids, and the rest of his family, condolences to you guys if you're watching. Nothing but love here from both your Bayou Blitz members, both your Bayou Blitz brothers. So I hope you're hanging in there. And folks, you can follow me, Facebook, Bob Rose. Twitter at Bobby R 2613. Obviously, our Bayou Blitz Twitter page at Bayou Blitz Pod, Bayou Blitz Facebook page. So please keep those numbers going. John Fourcade, we'd love to. We loved having you on for the hour that you were. I can't wait to get you back on, especially for your draft coverage. Folks, if you missed that interview, please go back and watch the replay. It's very insightful. Brendan and I both love talking to past Saints players anyway. But John, you were a treat to have on. I can't wait to do it again with you.
Absolutely. For myself, you can follow me virtually everywhere at BT Boylan. Hopefully next week I sound a little bit better. I'm actually surprised I made it through most of this without having to step away. Only one time. That's not too bad.
It was when you asked me an insightful question after John left, and then you leaned off the screen and vomited or something. So I guess you didn't like my answer.
No, it was one of those. I ran out of tea. I ran out of hot tea, and my throat was like, we can't hold this in anymore, my friend. No, your answers only make me vomit like once or twice a month, so I don't think that was quite it. I'm just kidding.
Good to know.
Just kidding. But guys, thanks so much for tuning in. My condolences to you John and your family. If you need anything, you know where to reach us.
Yeah.
We're here for you throughout anything in life, good, bad, or indifferent. So for Bob Rose, I'm Brendan Boylan. Make sure you catch us next week on the Bayou Blitz. Follow the Bayou Blitz on Facebook and on Twitter at Bayou Blitz Pod. Until next week, hope you guys continue to stay safe, stay healthy, find some peace, spread love, practice positivity. We'll see you next week on the Bayou Blitz. Who dat?
I know.